Hello ladies and gentlemen, Nick here and welcome to my review of the 2011 Doctor Who Christmas special, The Doctor, the Widow and the Wardrobe, widely considered the worst Doctor Who Christmas special, unless you really hate Twice Upon a Time, or The End of Time, or The Snowmen, because that one's gotten quite a bit of unpopularity over the last couple of years, or The Return of Doctor Mysterio, which is actually one I really like. That one might be one of my favourites. Possibly my favourite of the Stephen Moffat ones, that or A Christmas Carol, which we covered last Christmas review. But Doctor, Widow and the Wardrobe. This one is, apart from if talking about Twice Upon a Time or maybe The End of Time, this is widely considered the worst one. And I can see why. I wouldn't go so far as the worst one, because Twice Upon a Time has been dropping in opinion. It's between this, The Snowmen, and Twice Upon a Time as being the weakest one for me. So we'll have to see about that. I did give Twice Upon a Time a 7 in my original review, but I think that's going to go down for a re-review, don't worry. So, Doctor Widow and the Wardrobe. Why do people dislike this one so much? Well, many of them probably consider it boring, which I can understand why. Some of it probably might find it a bit cringy as well. What do I think of it though? Well, that's what this review's all about. So, for me, The Doctor, the Widow and the Wardrobe is okay. It's got some good moments, but it's also got some not so good stuff. Let's have a look. The first quarter of an hour, I think, or just under a quarter of an hour, is really good, I think. With, well, you would expect, to start with, you would expect after the events of Series 6, the Doctor's going to be a bit more quiet now. He's going to be a bit more hidden. He's not going to get too much, well, he's still going to travel the universe and get involved with other people's affairs. That's what the Doctor usually does. Apart from exceptional times, like when he was exiled to Earth, or whilst he was fighting the Time War. But you'd expect after Series 6 he'd be a bit more quiet as he was stepping back into the shadows. But as this is a Christmas special, as this is a Stephen Moffat Christmas special, this episode opens with a bang as the Doctor is preventing an alien attempt to subjugate the Earth. We don't know which aliens they are. They've got a big, massive spaceship, and they're attempting to destroy or enslave the humans. So the Doctor blows up the spaceship and falls to Earth, trying to get into a spacesuit, as the TARDIS is somewhere on Earth. Upon crashing to Earth, he is discovered by Madge Arwell, who helps him take him to find his phone box in town. Now, there is a funny bit where in this episode where Madge is able to open the phone box with a hairpin, and the Doctor's doesn't believe she's able to do it because it's the TARDIS has a lock that would be, well, a hairpin wouldn't open the TARDIS lock, but Madge manages to do it. Now, that is a bit of a funny scene. Now, that might slap in the face of what could be said about the TARDIS, how a TARDIS lock could be just opened by a hairpin, but it turns out it's the wrong police box, so that actually is a bit of a funny gag. I'm sure the real TARDIS's lock couldn't be opened by a hairpin, but a normal police box, yeah. Although whether that type of police box would be around in 1938 is questionable. Might have been, I'm not quite sure. Anyway, so this is taking place in 1938. This is the second Stephen Moffat story in 13 months, over a 13-month period, to be partially set in 1938, by the way, with Let's Kill Hitler being the first and The Angels Take Manhattan being the third and final. Although all three of them take place over different countries, Berlin in Germany, somewhere in the UK, and New York in the United States. Anyway, 3 years later, it's now 1941. Again, this is the fourth 1941 partially set story since the show's revival, following The Empty Child and the Doctor Dances, Victory of the Daleks, the Pandoric Opens and the Big Bang, although only for a few minutes at the start of the Pandoric Opens, and now here. Anyway, so Madge's husband, Reg, played by Alexander Armstrong. Madge is played by Claire Skinner, by the way. So Reg is I think he's a Lancaster or a Hurricane bomber pilot, and he and his crew are on their way home from a mission. However, their plane is damaged, and they're traveling on a night where it's cloudy and they cannot see the stars. So the Hurricane or Lancaster plane is presumed to be destroyed and the crew dead. And Madge is unable to break it to her children that their father has died, and she's planning to tell them after Christmas, so that Christmas is not remembered to be what takes their father away from them. However, after meeting the Doctor, he had told her just to make a wish if she ever needed his help again. And I guess she makes some sort of a wish at some point. Certainly, Lily and Cyril do this. We were her children do the chicken splitty thing as a kind of a wish thing. So that's one or the other will cause the Doctor to come to them to look after them during a Christmas period, where they go to their uncle's house in the country to escape the bombings over the Christmas period. Now, I will say it's probably around here that the 11th Doctor gets a bit very silly. He's definitely showing the more wacky, silly side of his incarnation here, and whilst there had been a bit of that over the last year and a bit, I think this is probably the biggest it's at, and I think depending on what the future episodes of Series 7 is, he is going to get his reputation for being the sillier, wacky Doctor. Despite having the darker, more serious side a bit early on, and still having a couple of serious moments throughout Series 6, and even in Series 7, there's a few darker moments. I might talk about one of them in the next episode, as he's more or less mostly business in the next story. There's a really ruddy bird outside. Shut up! Actually, that's business as usual as well. Anyway, the Doctor has come to be the caretaker of the house, a title of caretaker he will use again in his next incarnation in a later story, which we will touch upon when we get to Series 8. But here he's got the different impression of caretaker. He thinks he's trying to take care of people whilst in the caretaker. He will be doing what the job description actually tells him. I'm smiling just thinking about that. Anyway, so he's done a lot of changes to the house to try and make it look quite fun and appealing to the family as well as to look after them. And there are quite a few silly bits, but Matt Smith is just amazing. Matt Smith is amazing throughout this episode, but his enthusiasm and his energy are at sugar high levels, especially in the bedroom scene for Lily and Cyril's. He is just so energetic and enthusiastic. He's so full of life. Even if you dislike the silly, wacky 11th Doctor, you can't deny Matt Smith puts 111% effort into it. And despite being the more silly, wacky stuff, Smith continues to be amazing, as I said. Although he does put down a peg or two when Madge does reveal that Reg is dead. The kids aren't here at the moment, so they don't know just yet. They're going to wait. They're going to find out later. So the Doctor has been brought down a peg for this, but he also manages to teach Madge to also let the children continue to be happy, because she's getting a bit. She gets a bit cross whenever they get a bit too happy, because she knows they're going to be sad later. Well, not cross, but she shouts at them. But the Doctor reassures her that she should let them be happy in the meantime, because they are going to be sad later. And then they go and find the big tree, and everybody is happy for the most parts. And there's a big ruddy present left underneath the tree that the Doctor left. And it's around this point where the episode starts to go down for me. Just before we hit the quarter of an hour mark, when the plot starts to show up, basically the threat shows up. Starts to hint as Cyril hears this something calling. Well, it sounds like it's calling him to begin with, but later on we can probably just assume that it's just calling out generally. So it's calling out, and Cyril hears it, and then later he goes and opens the big present, because Lily and Cyril like to open their presents early. I wonder how they get away with that usually. Like, they open their presents and they don't have it damaged, the wrapping paper damaged and stuff, and then the next morning it's been wrapped up nice and neatly again, and then they have to pretend to be surprised for what they already have, what they already know they've got. Also, doesn't opening your presents early ruin the magic of Christmas Day then? If you open it early? Like, what's the point in Christmas if you open your presents early? In terms of presents, there are other points of Christmas, but what's the point in opening presents on Christmas Day if you're going to open them early? Same for birthdays as well, and any other occasions where people get presents on special occasions. So what's the point in having special days to open presents if you're going to open them early? So anyway, Cyril goes into this magical world, which is Narnia inspired. This story is a Narnia inspired story, like how the last one was A Christmas Carol. inspired story. So Cyril enters this basically snowy forest, which turns out to be an Androzani tree farm. At least people from Androzani Major have come to harvest the trees as fuel. Um, basically. Androzani, by the way, is a reference to the Fifth Doctor's final story, The Caves of Androzani, from 1984 in season 21. In that story, the Fifth Doctor landed on Androzani Minor, but there were people from Androzani Major as well appearing in that story. This isn't Androzani Major. This is another planet, but I'm not sure what the name is. It might just be a moon, perhaps, or something. Anyway, there's a magical forest with snow, and the trees are living. They have souls, and it's those souls that are calling out to Cyril. Meanwhile, Lily has discovered the Doctor has got a phone box, the TARDIS, in room, his room, and he says it's his wardrobe. Hence the title of The Doctor, the Widow, and the Wardrobe. With the widow being Madge. The Doctor and Lily then follow Cyril, finding out that he's gone down to the present and he's gone into the forest. So they follow him down there, and then at some point Madge wakes up, discovers her children aren't in bed, and then also follows them into the forest. Also, because time is moving differently, they are at different time intervals. So Cyril's 20 minutes ahead of the Doctor and Lily, and presumably Madge is a little bit further behind them. So the Doctor and Lily go through the forest, and he basically explains what it's that it's a forest. He was going to take the family on a trip for as a Christmas Day treat, and now something's going wrong around here, and Cyril is caught up in the middle of it. It turns out the souls of the trees are trying to escape from the planet before it is burnt by the Androzani Major's people's acid rain to be turned into fuel. Cyril is following the wooden king of the forest, and the wooden queen is waiting within a tower made by some trees in order to escape in this pod at the top. The Doctor and Lily follow Cyril to this place, and Cyril gets this sort of crown thing placed on him while sitting in a chair in order for him to take the souls of the trees away from the planet. However, he's considered to be too weak, as is the Doctor, due to them being male when the Doctor has a tribe. But it turns out the females humans are strong when it comes to it, but Lily is too young to pilot the thing. In the meantime, Madge meets up with a trio of Androzani Major fuel harvesters, played by Bill Bailey, Arabella Weir, and another guy whose name escapes me. And to be honest, these guys are actually only here for exposition and comedy value. And they're kind of wasted, in all honesty. I'll talk more about the actors and the characters later on, but in all honesty, the Androzani harvesters are wasted, as both as characters and their actors. They're just there for exposition and for comedy value. And even then, whilst there is some good comedy here, like the guy Van Hutchins, who's played by the actor whose name is I don't remember. He has mother issues, so that's a funny bit. And Arabella Weir's character has respect for Madge Arwell due to being a supposed unarmed civilian woman, and even Bill Bailey is quite a fun, not your typical guy in charge, probably because he's supposed to be a comedic character. Anyway, Madge has them held hostage at gunpoint after they put their guns on the floor to respect her. She was probably pretending to be crying. Which, by the way, makes me ask why she has a gun in the first place. Is she worried of a Nazi invasion, therefore she's got a gun for self-defense? Or to quote Mr. TARDIS review in his TARDIS, was she going to force the kids back to bed at gunpoint? I don't know. It would make more sense if she quickly grabbed Bill Bailey's gun, pointed it at him, and told him she was looking for her children and she wanted to know. And then Bill Bailey's like, "What? Children? What?" Not too dissimilar to the expression in the actual episode, but it would make more sense that Madge didn't have a gun on her, but once they put their guns down, she manages to acquire one of them and then points it at them and asks where her children are, and then they're like, "What?" So yeah, that's a bit odd. And then when they're on the harvest, again, exposition and stuff, and then teleported away. And then Madge has to pilot the harvester to get to the tower after crying in a corner for about a minute. Um, she just sits and cries in a corner. She says the cockpit isn't too much dissimilar to an aeroplane once, and she could possibly pilot it off because Reg took her up in one once, but then she goes and sits in a corner and cries for a minute before actually getting round to doing it. Mother of the Year. And this is the woman who saves the forest at the end when she arrives at the tower. She's the one who has the crown placed on her head and is the one to save the forests. I think Stephen Moffat's trying to have a positive mother's message, but I'm not quite sure. Does it come across that way? I don't know. It feels a bit odd. Anyway, so Madge manages to take the souls of the trees back into the time vortex, and then using psychic energy, she takes them back home. But she has to break the news to her children that their father is dead. However, it turns out that thinking of him managed to bring him and the crew back home. Well, we don't see the crew, but we do see Reg at the house on Christmas Day. Maybe the crew went back home to their own homes, perhaps. But it does beg the question: where did they go? But anyway, so Reg is back and alive. So the title of this episode is actually slightly untrue, as Madge is not a widow anymore. But yes, anyway, so Reg is back and the family is all happy, and then Madge tells the doctor to go and tell his friends that he's still alive after they have a quick little talk where she finds out he was the guy she met 3 years earlier. The final scene shows the Doctor going to see Amy and Rory on Christmas Day in 2013, as it's 2 years after the events of Series 6. And he joins them for Christmas dinner. And that's probably the best scene of the episode, actually. I really enjoyed the opening, and the first quarter of an hour was pretty good, despite some weaker spots. But that last scene was probably the best scene of the episode, with the Doctor going to see Amy and Rory for Christmas dinner 2 years after they thought he had died. Although from the last episode, they knew he was still alive thanks to the river. But that was probably the best scene of the episode. So this episode is worth watching all the way through and for that scene. Okay, so the positives. Matt Smith continues to be fantastic as per usual and puts 111% energy into his performance. I also think Holly Earl is a very good young actress playing Lily. She does a very good job, and it's nice to have reference to the Case of Androzani. The direction is mostly brilliant by Baron Blackburn. My only criticism is that they speed up some of these fast-paced close-ups, or not quite close-ups, but mid-shots. They kind of speed it up in the editing. I'm not so keen on that, but apart from that, it's not too bad. The visual effects are brilliant, and it's nice to have the tree people aren't the villains in the story. I don't know if you can actually say who's the proper villains. Maybe the harvesters, but even that would only be for the trees. For the Doctor and company, there isn't really a proper villain. So, I mean, it's better than Twice Upon a Time where there turns out to be no villain, but it's all they're acting like they're villains. Whilst here, they start to act like villains, but we can sympathise with them. Whilst in Twice Upon a Time, it looks like villains, but then we get the twist and it's like, what? What? Whilst here, it actually makes sense. Whilst many people would consider this story boring, I personally didn't find it boring, nor slow, or uninteresting. It does have a kind of a slower pace, but not one that drags or feels boring for me personally. Maybe other people. The first quarter of an hour, or just under a quarter of an hour, really, is still it's quite a fun, entertaining quarter of an hour, and that final scene is just perfect, absolutely perfect. However, there are plenty of negatives. Claire Skinner tries her best as Madge, but I don't think she's that particularly brilliant in the role, and nor is I think the character's also kind of up and down. The kid who plays Cyril isn't that great. He's good, but he's not great. Most of his expressions look the same, and there doesn't seem to be much of much reaction on his face. There are some points where he's good, like the bit where Madge tells him what she's going to do after finding the Doctor, and she's going to take him to the phone box. And then when Reg comes in, he asks where his mother's, where Madge has gone. Cyril replies with "out." That was a funny bit. That was quite good, and I think The boy does some good stuff in places, but it's mostly when he's being quiet and he's just got the same reaction on his face throughout most of the stuff in the forest. There isn't much of a reaction. So for me, Cyril starts off pretty good, as does the actor, but then he goes a bit down. Goes down a little bit once we get to that forest. And one does not turn Alexander Armstrong into a into a stalker. As Reggie and Madge apparently met after he stalked her, and would only stop stalking her, or well, following her, they say in the episode, but basically it's a stalker, until she agreed to marry him. I wonder if people in 1938 thought that was normal. But yeah, that is a very strange thing. Otherwise, Reggie's a good character and Armstrong does a great job there, although he is even better as Mr. Smith in the Sarah Jane Adventures and the Stolen Earth of Journey's End in this series. But it's nice to have him make a physical appearance, especially as the Sarah Jane Adventures story where he was going to make a physical appearance was not made due to the sad passing of Elizabeth Sladen. That was going to be part of Series 5, but that was in the half of Series 5 that didn't get made, sadly. But at least we do get to see him here, but his character's turned into a stalker towards the end. That's not quite a good thing, considering his character has died, and that's the emotional edge of this story. Thankfully, he turns out to be alive, so we do get a happy ending. And I don't think that was a forced That was a forced way. I think that was actually handled really well in bringing him back. It's just a shame that they turned him into a stalker just before that bit. Even if it was just for that one bit. But still. But Armstrong does a good job. As I mentioned, the Androzani mine harvesters are just there for comedy value and exposition. And they're basically just there. Could you have done without them? Well, if yes, then you'd have to give more exposition to the Doctor about what's going on, or to the trees to explain what's going on. But yeah, I think actually that would have worked just as well, and they could have done without the Handazani miners. And that's about it. That's really about it. There isn't a huge lot of awful in the story. I can see why people wouldn't enjoy it, but I don't think it's awful. At the same time, there are plenty of issues that do diminish it from being a great story. I think it's okay. I'll say it's an okay story. It's not that brilliant. It's it could have done with another draft. It could have done with a couple of changes, but for the most part, it's okay. It could be worse. It could honestly be worse. Overall, I think The Doctor, The Widow and the Wardrobe is a okay story. It's not god awful, but it's not that great either. I can see where people are coming from when they don't like it or can't get into it, but at the same time, I think it's okay. There are some good bits, but not enough to pass it higher than my score, which is a 5 out of 10 for this story. Yeah, I passed it at 5 out of 10, which could be arguably one of the highest scores for this story, unless you're someone who actually really enjoys it. Like I said, I found some good stuff in it, but there are some weaker stuff within. It's definitely more on a script value, and some of the acting for the negative points, as most and those niggles about the sped up shots, but for the most part, there was some good stuff in it, and it was enjoyable in places. Not enough to be given a higher score. It was okay, just okay. Well, for me anyway. You might like it less. You might like it more. Actually, there might be a small minority, or just a minority, that might actually like it more. Hey, you never know. I've seen it happen elsewhere, so who knows? But yeah, so this is just my opinion. I think it's okay. Right, so I will say it's probably the weakest Christmas special so far. As of 2011, it would be the weakest Christmas special. But we do have a couple more to go before the last Christmas special, and that last one might arguably be the worst one. And the next one is also one that I probably would rank quite low. The Snowmen, and the last one being Twice Upon a Time. As for Twice the Time the Doctor, I think that one might be better than this one. Same for Last Christmas. Husbands of River Song, I would say, is better than this, and so is Return of Doctor Mysterio. But that's me. And like I said, we'll get to each and every one of them when we get to them. Oh, and if we're going festive special, Christmas/New Year Resolution is definitely better than this. Definitely. In fact, I could probably say the only two that are likely to be worse than this one are The Snowmen and Twice Upon a Time. For both just Christmas or for Christmas/New Year. And all of the Russell T Davies Christmas and New Year ones before this one are better. So, anyway, that's it from my review of The Doctor, the Widow and the Wardrobe. Thank you for watching. Next time, we begin Series 7 with possibly the worst new series story of the revived era at the point of that story's broadcast. The Series 7 opener, Asylum of the Daleks, which possibly could be the worst Dalek story ever made. This or the Series 9 opener, but we'll see about that one. But yeah, Asylum of the Daleks. Tune in tomorrow to find out why I consider it the weakest Dalek story made, that or Series 9's opener, and one of the weakest stories made of all time, certainly the weakest new series story at time of its story's broadcast, and one of the weakest new series stories overall. I'll see you guys then. Goodbye. Don't forget to click below to subscribe to the official Nicholas Payne Retro YouTube channel.